This is the Cancer Interviews podcast, and I'm your host, Bruce Morton. The score is Deb Cryer 3, Cancer nothing. Our guest on this episode is Deb Cryer from Mapleton, Georgia. She has survived breast cancer, skin cancer, and thyroid cancer, and she has a message for cancer, and that is that she's ready to help cancer patients and caregivers. So now it's time to hear her story. And Deb, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I'm very honored to be a guest on your program.
And we look forward to hearing your story, all of your story. We want to begin with the part of your life that has nothing to do with cancer. So if you would, tell us a bit about where you're from, what you do for work, and what you do for fun.
Great. Well, I'm from Colorado, but I now live in Atlanta, Georgia. And I always have to make that clarification because I am a proud Colorado person. I have my own marketing and PR firm, Wise Women Communications. Wonderful husband, no kids, but 4 dogs and 2 cats.
And when you have time to do stuff for fun, besides playing with the dogs and cats, what do you like to do?
You know, it's kind of a variety of things. One thing we really like to do is just take drives. I mean, it's very cool around the Atlanta area and the South in general. There's so much history down here that we can see. There's many, many beautiful gardens, so I can go look at them and not have to try and raise them myself. I also sit on several boards and enjoy working on those also.
Now, your cancer journey, it began with a mammogram that all women get, or all women should get. Mm-hmm. If you would, let's start from that point. What happened when you went in for a mammogram and how that related to your cancer journey?
Sure. It was way back in 2015. As you said, I went in for my normal mammogram. Did it, wasn't even home yet. And they called and said, you need to come back. Now, I used to work for the American Cancer Society and for an oncologist, so I know, that's not probably a good thing. So went back, did it again. I didn't have a lump. I didn't have a bump. I didn't have anything that you would normally associate with any type of concern. What I had was microcalcifications. The computer saw them. So that was why the mammogram computer was able to pick it up so quickly. Teeny tiny little flecks. Discovered when I went to Dr. Google, because of course we all do that, right? Went to Dr. Google, discovered that most women of a certain age have these. It happens in our bodies as our hormones change. But in a very rare case, which I am rare, I am special, they do turn into precancerous type of things. And eventually what happens is they gather and then they start causing really big problems.
And you needed to experience, and I'm sure this was not a pleasant experience, but a necessary one, you needed to experience a needle biopsy. What happened with that and after that?
I had 2 needle biopsies, and they're actually, in this case, called a stereotactic biopsy. It's very fun. It's kind of like a car on the old lifts. They lift you up above the doctor, and that gives them a good view of what they're doing. Both of those came back negative. But of course, we were aiming for teeny little specks, and so they came back negative. At that point, we decided, let's go ahead. And now there was no rush. I mean, the diagnosis was stage 0. So this was, over the course of weeks that we were doing all of this. Decided, though, let's go ahead and do an MRI. So I did an MRI. The lymph nodes on my left side lit up, and it showed that there was something going on. But again, we weren't really concerned because I had a horrible poison ivy reaction on my left arm. So we were thinking, okay, that's it. So the surgeon finally said, you know what, let's go in and take some lymph nodes out. Let's just make sure that this isn't anything more to be concerned about. Nobody was as surprised as she was when we came back with 8 of 12 lymph nodes were positive. So I went from stage 0 to stage 3, just poof. I didn't even have an oncologist at that point because we hadn't been concerned. But then obviously things got very concerning.
And that led to your diagnosis. Now, Deb, everybody is different in terms of their persona, and anybody who's been diagnosed with cancer has They're hit with different types of cancers,
Right.
different levels of severity. So we already know that this was a very bad day when you were told that you have cancer. That much we know.
Right.
But given all the variables in your equation, what was your reaction to all this?
I was annoyed. I was pissed. I literally told my doctor, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. Now, you make time, right? But that was just kind of my first reaction was no. Of course I was upset. It was one of the few times that I actually cried during this entire journey, shed a few tears, but I'm not really one of those that's going to feel sorry for myself. I'm more the, well, let's get this done and take care of it type of person. So like I said, the initial diagnosis was stage 3. And at that point, they said, you got to go to an oncologist.
By the way, we're confident you'll be able to learn some tips and tools to help you through your personal cancer journey as you listen to this episode. But first, we'd like to invite you to please give us a like, leave a comment or a review below, and share this story with your friends. Kindly click on the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon. That way you'll be notified the next time we post an interview. And if you or a loved one are facing a cancer journey, please check out the description and show notes below. Click on the link to check out our free guide, The Top 10 Things I Wish I Knew When I First Got Cancer. And Deb, for you, when you first got cancer, again, this varies from person to person and cancer to cancer and diagnosis to diagnosis. But did you have treatment options as to what you wanted to do going forward? And based on those options, what did you eventually decide to go with?
Right. Yeah, there are lots of options. And I tell people exactly what you're saying. Even if you have the exact same diagnosis, your body, your treatment, everything is different. There is nothing the same. And so the people who said, oh, well, my grandmother went through that. No, it was, it was very different. There are so many options out there, and it does get rather confusing, but I urge people to explore them. Make sure you know what you are getting into. Now, I did choose to go the traditional route. The first course, the first decision was that I would do chemo. And we decided to do it prior to surgery because those little speckly specks were now floating throughout my body. And so we decided, let's do a massive round of chemo. A lot of times with breast cancer patients, you hear that they get a cocktail called Red Devil. That was not what I got because I had a different type of cancer. Like you said, it's all different. So the plan was that I would have chemo, then surgery, then radiation. And so again, the traditional approach. But I also talked to nutritionists. I talked to all sorts of different people to kind of have a combination of things that was going to work best for me.
Now, chemotherapy for you, if I have this correct, involved a massive, maybe record-setting cocktail of 8 drugs. Deb, I'm not going to ask you to name all of them, but if there were 1 or 2 that were most prominent, for the benefit of people watching and listening, what were those drugs involved in the cocktail? Maybe the most prominent 1 or 2.
I honestly don't remember because there were 8. The course of treatment for my first one took a little over 8 hours. I discovered that Jimmy John's delivers to oncology rooms. And so I had my lunch delivered. But one of the things also when you're having your first treatment, they go very slowly. Now, I had a port put in. Into my shoulder because we knew this was going to be kind of a longer term type of thing. And my veins just were not going to hold out. So I had the port put in, but they put them in slowly and one at a time to make sure that your body doesn't react to them. And you also get drugs that help with nausea. You get Benadryl, which in my case, Benadryl in most cases makes people very sleepy. Oh, no, I am the hyperactive child when I get Benadryl. So, I was just kind of this little buzz thing sitting there. But yeah, I had 8 different drugs over the course of 8 hours.
And as is the case with not everybody, but almost everybody who undergoes chemo, there are complications. For you, how do those complications manifest themselves?
Well, mine were massive. I always tell people, anything that happens, let your doctor know. Because they might be able to make adjustments. Don't assume you're going to have nausea. Don't assume you're going to have pain. again, it's like you said, everybody is different. So I was fine for about 3 days. Halloween came. I put candy out for trick-or-treaters. I mean, all sorts of good things. Then I started feeling kind of puny, right? But I'm thinking, I had these huge doses of chemo. And so it was not unexpected. Then I started running a fever. In fact, I sent my husband to work. I thought, I'm fine. The neighbors all knew, what was going on. And the ones that were home knew, I might go, hello, need some help. But, and then I started, getting worse. I started running a fever, which that is a little bit more unusual. And they tell you call in. So we called into the oncologist and got the standard, take Tylenol, let us know if it goes over 101.1. Not sure why the 0.1, but 101.1. And so Tylenol helped a bit, but then the pain hit. And I had a pain in my lower left side that was unbelievable. And I knew that was not normal. So we called the ambulance and the fire department because the fire department had to get me down the stairs. That was fun. And get me off to the hospital. I'm my normal chatty self, like I normally am, until about halfway to the hospital, and then I passed out. And turns out what had happened was a complication that, at least at that point, happens less than 1% of the time, because, as I said, I have to be special. And at that point, I was the only person that ever survived it. Now, hopefully that has changed, but it is something that is a very rare complication. It caused damage to my colon, and I ended up in septic shock, which is often fatal. And I remember hearing the doctors arguing over how soon I would die that day. Now, the conversation was a little bit different, according to my husband, but that was the gist of it. And I do distinctly, though, remember thinking, excuse me, I get a vote. And so I had emergency surgery on my colon, which obviously saved my life. And then just kind of went from there. The septic shock has caused far more complications that were long-term than anything else. I ended up spending 7 weeks in the hospital, lots more surgeries going on while I was there, in and out of ICU, all sorts of things. And it was quite the challenge to really just keep alive.
Let's talk about some of the other more, and I don't mean to make light of this, some of the more garden variety things that happen with chemo, and that would be the taste of food. I've heard so many times that everything suddenly tastes like metal. There's also the fatigue, and I think there's a bit of a double standard here for women and men. I think this affects women more than men, but hair loss. Any of those things, did those bubble to the surface for you?
I was not able to eat because I did have a lot of problems. And so I don't know about the taste one, but yeah, that is something very common. And not even just metal. I mean, sweet tastes sour. I mean, all sorts of things. Your taste buds get all screwed up. I did lose my hair. And now I have a funny story, and we can make light of this because I do. You have to get through this with humor, right? Because I had so many complications, I had quite the number of doctors in the hospital. And so, they all made rounds. One morning, I looked like this. My hair had been coming out in clumps. And I had a friend who takes care of dogs. And so she had trimmers, right? And so she had said, hey, I'll come when you're ready. And so she actually came to the hospital and shaved my head. And for me, it was just one less thing to have to worry about. But the really funny thing was the doctors who saw me in the morning with a full head of hair came back in the afternoon and I'm bald as a billiard ball. Didn't have time to get hats or anything like that. And they were all like, whoa. And so, yeah, it was really funny. I lost one eyebrow, just one. I have no idea why. And it is interesting because I was scheduled for, I believe, 10 full treatments, and I did only have the one. So who knows what would have happened if I'd had them all? Because the decision was made. Oh no, don't do that again. But yeah, it was. You end up with such weird things from chemo. The brain fog, I think, was one that was definitely there. But I also had a lot of anesthesia. One of the surgeries that I had was about 7.5 hours, and lots of different procedures. And so my poor little brain just got pretty scrambled.
Now, the chemo was supposed to be pre-surgery. Let's get to the surgery. You opted for a double mastectomy with no reconstruction.
I did.
Looking back, given the options you had, was this a difficult decision? And looking back, you think it was the right decision?
For me, it was not a difficult decision, and it was the right decision. It is something that is, every woman has to give very, very serious consideration to. I think a lot of my decision was based on the fact that I'm old. I don't care about those girls. I wanted them gone. I didn't want to have to worry about them. So that was why I decided to do the double. I didn't want to be lopsided, But I also didn't want to have to worry about the remaining breast. It was like, no, let's just get rid of it. I did discover in the process, it's really funny because when you have a breast removed that is not affected by cancer, it's considered prophylactic surgery. So not medically necessary. So you have to pay for it. And your insurance doesn't cover it. It's like plastic surgery in essence. And so we did have to pay the difference. I mean, it was really kind of a strange little thing. But I also decided to not have reconstructive surgery, again, because I'm old, didn't really matter to me. And unfortunately, every woman I have talked to who has had reconstructive surgery has had issues. Many, many, many women do not have any problems, and so, but that's something to really explore if that's what you're thinking about. Just make sure that it's what you want to do, because, you're, in many cases, you're putting a foreign object or objects back into your body.
And as you go forward now, as we look at your breast cancer journey through the lens of the here and now, do you going forward, do you feel whole or as close as you can to feeling whole?
I do. It's really funny. In amongst all of this, they did change my diagnosis to stage 4 because I had pain on a rib, and they tested it for cancer, and the test came back as inconclusive. So they decided, let's just call it stage 4. That way we can give the most treatment we can. And so they did that. But, when I look at my scars, and I have a whole heck of a lot of them now, my scars have scars because, I keep having complications and all sorts of things. But I look at it and I realize if I did not have those scars, I would not be alive. And so that's kind of my thought process on those. Now you can't see any of them. There are a couple that are fair, like I've got some that are on my neck, but for the most part, they're on my torso. The bigger scars are from all of the abdominal surgeries that I had to have due to the septic shock. But yeah, I'm like, this is the way I am now. Doesn't really bother me that much.
Now, let's move forward with your cancer journeys, and we have to put the S on the end because they are plural. What led to your diagnosis of basal cell carcinoma in 2021?
Sure. It was an easy one. I was in for my annual visit with my primary care doctor. Bless her, she makes me come in for an annual twice a year, just because she wants to keep tabs on me. And at the end of the visit, she said, is there anything else? And I said, well, I got this sore on my arm that won't heal. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, oh, it's been here too long. I mean, several months, right? And probably even longer than that. So woof, off I go to the dermatologist who, took one look at it and made some faces. And he did a biopsy and said, it's basal cell carcinoma. Now, that type of cancer is very easy to treat. And it was such a small little patch. He basically just burned it off. And I didn't even have a stitch. I mean, he stuck it shut with a Band-Aid. And so didn't have to worry about that. Now, I do have to go to a dermatologist now every 6 months just to make sure that everything is good. But yeah, that was, and that may very well be because of my, I'm a natural redhead. I have freckles. I burn easily, all of those various things that, kind of go with having that type of cancer.
And then in 2023, you were diagnosed with papillary thyroid cancer. What led to that?
It just keeps going. I was in at my doctor. I actually am still in treatment. I still have the port in my shoulder, and I go in every 21 days and have treatment. And so was talking to my doctor, and I said, I've got a pain. And before she panicked, I said, no, it's an okay pain. When I sit at my computer too long, I get a spasm in my arm, in the bad side, right, the left side. And I said, I'm assuming it's scar tissue, because if I move around, it goes away, but, can I get physical therapy or something? And she said, oh, yeah, you're right. She said, but, we haven't been able to do a test on you, a big test, for quite a while, because there's been no indications. So she said, let's do a CAT scan. Let's just, order a CAT scan up. She can put down on the cause pain, right? And so that way we were doing that. So I trot myself in, I have my CAT scan, whatever's in my arm is, like we said, scar tissue. I've had physical therapy, it's much better, but it showed lesions on my thyroid. And that was quite shocking. We had absolutely no idea that there was anything going on there, because there were no symptoms. This was something that was caught so early that it had not caused any problems at all. So more tests, more needles, more shots, more biopsies, more scans. And they said, yeah, it's papillary thyroid cancer. So the treatment for it was that we totally removed my thyroid. It's been not quite a year since that was done. We were very fortunate. There actually were two tumors, but caught it so early that I didn't have to have any follow-up treatment for it. So, which is good, because thyroid cancer treatment is pretty nasty. But I did ask my endocrinologist, filling in my bingo card of how many doctors I can have. I asked him, I said, okay, is this a spread of the breast cancer, right? Because that would be your first thought. And he said, no. He said, thyroid cancer is always a primary cancer, which I don't know if that was good or bad. I was like, okay. But I do have a family history of thyroid cancer, and I had radiation for breast cancer. And so it would have gotten that area on my neck. And he said, you just kind of combine all those things, and that might be what happened.
So, Deb, you have survived breast cancer, skin cancer, and thyroid cancer. You're still with us. You're still going strong. If you take kind of a 30,000-foot view of all that has happened, all that you've gone through, how exciting is it to know that that you've been met by these formidable opponents and you've survived them all?
We do what we have to do. And I think that's kind of the thing. The thing about having stage 4 cancer is it is not considered curable. It's just kind of always there. But I've passed the 5-year mark, which is kind of one of those markers. Next year, I know we're going to pass the 10-year mark, which is another one of those big days, right? And so you just keep going. Now, I'm stubborn, and I do use my sense of humor in a lot of ways to get through all of this. But more than anything, I just keep thinking, I'm not done. I still have stuff I need to be doing.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that will make a nice segue into the area in which we wanted to wrap up, and that is to hear more about what you are doing to help cancer patients and cancer caregivers.
Well, thank you, Bruce, for the opportunity to tell people. We started an initiative called tryingnottodie.live. That is the website URL. And it is about helping someone with their cancer journey. I like to say that we are warriors. You call me a patient and I go, ugh. But we're warriors because we are in the fight for our life, right? I even have warrior tattooed on my arm because, that helps give me strength. But it's all about the fact that we are in this battle, but we're not in it alone. And so how do we build our tribe around us? And so trying not to die.live is a way for people to get support, to get resources. Somebody sent me something fairly early in my diagnosis, and it says, and this is kind of where the warrior came from, fate whispers to the warrior, you cannot withstand the storm. And the warrior responds, I am the storm. And our whole premise is, we get, whether it's cancer, whether it's a serious illness, whatever it is, we get so caught up in trying to not die that we forget we have to live. Sometimes it's 5 hours. Sometimes it's 5 weeks, 5 years, 50 years. Whatever it is, we have to be living that entire time. And that's the importance of all of this. But it is about, you have to take charge. You as the cancer warrior, you're in charge. You need to advocate 100% for your health. I loved your question at the start about what were the various options. You have to research those. You have to know what are your options. Don't do something because your doctor, your family, your spouse, your whoever says this is what you should be doing. It's your body and it's your choice. And you may choose not to do anything, and that's okay. That's your choice. But make sure that those around you are the right people and that they are your advocates. There were obviously several times during my journey where my husband was the person who was in charge because I was not able to be. And so he knew these are what my wishes are. So make sure you have done all of that. We tell people, make sure you've got your powers of attorney done, your wills. It's kind of a thing that we don't want to think about, but tell you what, we should be anybody in their life should have a will, right? So make sure that those things are done and in order, but support each other. That is the big thing, is how can we support each other on our journeys?
Excellent. Deb Cryer, Mapleton, Georgia, thanks so much for sharing your story. And thanks for including within that story some sage advice. And before we go, one more time, what is that website with all the colons and slashes and that sort of thing?
www.tryingnottoDie.live, Live.
Excellent. Deb, thanks so much for being with us on Cancer Interviews. We really appreciate your story.
Thank you so much, and I am so honored to have been a guest.
And that'll wrap up this edition of the Cancer Interviews podcast. We want to remind you, as we always do when we conclude, that if you or a loved one are on a cancer journey, you are not alone. There are people out there like Deb Cryer who have information and advice that can ease that cancer journey. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.